What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiege. Thursday today, January 30th. We're getting closer to the end of the month here, and we got some more football to talk about. On today's schedule, we got some stories around the NFL revolving a little bit about the Super Bowl and also just some things around the league in this down period before we get to the actual Super Bowl. Actually, today also, I just reminded myself that the Pro Bowl is starting in about 35 minutes or so that's something that we got to look forward to at least this week. But on this show, we're going to discuss Matthew Stafford apparently planning to return for 2025. Could it be his last season, or could there still be a little bit more there for Matthew Stafford to play with the Los Angeles Rams? We're going to go over that decision and what it could mean also for the Rams going forward. And also, Saquon Barkley, obviously a major part of the Eagles' success this season, but has it been overshadowing the real most valuable piece to the Eagles team overall, to their success, right? We're going to have a little bit of a discussion there and talk about both sides when we get to it, but that and some more coming up on today's show. So make sure to stick around and find out what we're going to talk about later on in the show. But for right now, if you guys have any questions or comments or any opinions that you'd like to share, please don't hesitate to do so, because your input and insight is always very much appreciated on these live shows. We always love to hear what you guys are thinking, get a different perspective on anything that we're talking about, and that way, just making the show a little bit more diverse. So if you want to make it absolutely sure that your message gets on the air and it gets featured, there's an easy way to do that just by using the Super Chat feature. Just click the $ at the bottom of the chat box to send in your Super Chat. In this way, it guarantees that your message gets on the air, because I'll be able to read it out loud, and just share any thoughts that you guys have on any of the topics. So go ahead, let us know what you're thinking, hit the Super Chat button, and let's keep this show as interactive and as exciting as possible. Again, if you want to get involved with the show, hit the Super Chat button, click the $ at the bottom of the chat box, and let us know what's on your mind. So with that now out of the way, we can start discussing the first piece of news that we got on today's show regarding Matthew Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams. After the Rams fell to the Eagles in the divisional round, Matthew Stafford said that he would take some time to think about his future, and, he is entering his 17th season now, and, he was going to take some time to go over things. I believe he's going to be, 37 as well going into next season. So obviously a lot to think about, right? He's closer to the end of his career than the start of it, obviously. And if you remember last year, there was some talk potentially of him thinking about retiring, or at least thinking of the possibility that it was getting closer and closer. And this offseason was no different. He said that he was going to take some time to think about it, but this time around, it didn't last as long as last offseason, because as we learned last night from Ian Rappaport, he reported that Matthew Stafford does plan to return in 2025. He's communicated that to the Los Angeles Rams already, and it's great news, obviously, for them. Sean McVay, I mentioned Sean McVay because he said after the season was over and everything like that, and he was asked a question about Matthew Stafford and his future, he also said that he'd rather know sooner rather than later, because of, obviously, a bunch of decisions that they have to make, and the planning already for next season, and shaping the acquisitions, the extensions around Matthew Stafford, right? Obviously, because of who he is, also his position and things like that. That's something that you have to know pretty early in the process. So, it only lasted 6 days, right? It was 6 days ago that he said that, so now he has his answer, and Matthew Stafford will be entering his 17th season in the NFL, and he'll also turn 37, like I said before. So, well, that's awesome. Well, it's great for Los Angeles to get their quarterback back, at least for one more season, after winning the division and getting to the divisional round. I mentioned, Stafford's 17th season and things like that in 37, but he really hasn't compared to maybe other older quarterbacks, he hasn't really shown me a lot that I'm like, ooh, like he is getting a little bit older. Like that didn't look great. He's still throwing the ball very well, very accurate. He still has the same velocity on that, and a lot of the success is predicated on him and how well he operates still among some of the best in the NFL. Right? I think it wouldn't be crazy to put him up there like top 7, top 6 still at 37 years old, which is great to see. And obviously, the Rams want to keep that around as long as possible. But the topic now, the task at hand right now will be Matthew Stafford's contract and how they addressed that topic going forward now. And if you guys remember, this was a topic last offseason as well, but his deal was restructured, it was revised in some way. We actually didn't get too much information from it at the time. So we know that it was restructured, and we know that that was settled over pretty well, that Stafford had no problem going into the season with this new contract. But with that restructuring, now Stafford still has those 2 years left on his deal, and he's set to have a $49.6 million cap hit for 2025, and then an additional $53.6 million in 2026. And with those two cap hits, only $4 million is fully guaranteed in 2025, and he has no guaranteed money if he so chooses to play his last year on that contract. He has no guaranteed money in 2026. So, of course, the Rams would want to lower that cap hit for at least this year, right? So, because of that feeling that most people get from the Rams and just basic logic, right, to lower that cap number, obviously that's not something that you would ideally want to have, right? But because of that, sources believe that Matthew Stafford is actually unlikely to return to Los Angeles without that restructuring of his contract. And on that topic, right, if they don't come to an agreement for whatever reason, whatever reality we live in where Matthew Stafford does not play for the Rams this season, if he wasn't able to do that and they weren't able to come to an agreement, the Rams could save around $27 million by trading him or cutting him after June 1st. I believe it's around like $5 million or $27 million that, within that range, if it's a trade or a cut right after June 1st, right, it'll vary depending on what they decide to do. So that's also a possibility, but Ian Rappaport also said that the Rams are not showing any indication that they want to go down that path. They very much want to have Matthew Stafford as their quarterback because they believe they're in a position to win right now, right? In the next year or two, they believe they're going to have their best chance to win with their current team. So they could potentially, do some salary cap gymnastics there and move around that cap number, restructure it again, maybe give him more guaranteed money as an option. I'm sure Matthew Stafford would love that. Anybody would. So, there's a lot of things they could do, not to get into the specifics because we don't actually know. But, they have a couple options, and the Rams, again, are not even probably remotely thinking of, let's just wait out. Maybe we could get a quarterback in the draft. It's nothing like that. They're very much on board with Matthew Stafford. And, thinking on this portion of the segment, right, on the contract, and it makes me think back to why McVay would maybe want to say something like that, right? Other than obviously wanting to know as the head coach and, all the planning, knowing that there's probably going to be a restructuring, why not, put it out there at least in the universe that, we want to kind of have an answer sooner rather than later. So it gives you more time to go over that restructuring. There's more time to negotiate rather than holding it off and putting everything on a pause. And, in some circumstance, maybe Matthew Stafford doesn't come back and the Rams put everything on hold just for Matthew Stafford not to come back, right? You don't want to go down that route. So Sean McVay, got the answer pretty quickly, less than a week, and now they have all this time to restructure that deal, knowing that Matthew is thinking of playing again, at least for one more year. And, if we were to speculate and live in the hypothetical, like oftentimes, we do in media, if for whatever reason Matthew Stafford did end up in trade talks or release talks, teams instantly would covet him more than anybody else because a lot of these teams are just a quarterback away. I mean, you think of the Jets potentially, the Steelers, the Raiders aren't a quarterback away, but they sure would love to have Matthew Stafford, I'm sure. So that's, in my mind, like about 10% chance that that would ever happen, but you never know, right? Crazier things have happened. So if that were to happen, Stafford would immediately be the number one target for everybody, right, that needs a quarterback. So that would be interesting. That would be bananas if that actually happened. But, I don't think it will at this point. And Los Angeles also doesn't have a legit answer after Matthew Stafford, right? So to say that they could ever get to a place where they want to trade him or release him, there's not really anything else to go for, right? A lot of these quarterback needy teams are stuck in this position this year where they're like, man, like the draft looks all right, or free agent, do we want to pay him that much money, or are we just going to stay with our same guy, right? It's a very tough moment to kind of live in right now. Nothing really fills you with a lot of anticipation, right? So it's a weird area right now for a lot of these teams that just need a quarterback. So the Rams, now knowing that they still have Stafford, I'm sure they'd much rather build around him and add guys like linebackers, defensive backs, right, that they desperately need to try and make another run at it at the Super Bowl. They were very close this year, and all their young talent is only going to get better. So they got a bright future, or at least this nice window with Matthew Stafford to really take advantage of it, and I expect them to be, or at least I expect us to be talking about them probably in a year's time from now, right? Around this same divisional round conference championship. I'm a big fan of what they're doing. So they have their quarterback. So that is a great move and a great relief, I'm sure, for all Rams fans that they now know Stafford will be back. But speaking about the Rams and moving on to our next segment, we're going to talk about the team that beat them and discuss a little bit about the Philadelphia Eagles, Saquon Barkley, or the Eagles defense, which has been more valuable to the team's success in 2024-2025, right? It seems like there's an obvious answer, but we're going to go more in depth in it and just discuss it here on the show. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with that after this.